Hi and welcome to this video. I'm going to show you how you can use flows in AttackForge to stream data to Power BI for analytics and visualizations. Flows is a new module in AttackForge which is purpose-built for automations and integrations. Before we get started, you'll find a copy of this flow on our support site, so you can also follow along here as well. And if you head over to the AttackForge Flows GitHub repository, there'll be an example here for Power BI which you can download, and then you can import this flow into your own AttackForge to get started fast. So let's start by checking out this flow in action. So we're going to head to AttackForge, and we're going to see that we have a flow that's already been built here to send vulnerability data to Power BI when a vulnerability is created in AttackForge. So let's open up a project and go ahead and create a vulnerability. So we're going to start by selecting a write-up. So I'm going to quickly search for one using the write-ups module. And from here, we can go ahead and assign the affected assets and go ahead and register that vulnerability. Now, if we open up Power BI and refresh, we'll see that the numbers have increased. Now, how did that happen? Let's take a look at that in a bit more detail. So we're going to head back into AttackForge within the flows module, which is available to users within the integration section. And we can see this example for sending a vulnerability to Power BI. So let's go ahead and open that up. Now what we'll see is all the different runs that have happened for this flow, and we can see there was one just now. So let's go ahead and click into that and get a bit more information. So here we can see there was only one action in this flow, which is taking vulnerability data from that vulnerability created event and sending that data to Power BI. So here we can see those inputs and outputs into that action, and the inputs is the data coming from the vulnerability itself. If we open up the HTTP tab, we'll see some information here about the actual endpoint, the Power BI endpoint that we're using to send the data to. We can see that it's a post request, which returns back a 200 response, and we can see the data that was sent from the vulnerability itself. So in this case, we're sending data relating to the vulnerability title and also the vulnerability priority. We can also see the headers which were sent across, and also we can see the response headers from Power BI. So we can see that Power BI returned a 200, which is generally a good sign. And we can see the headers that it came back with, but no response body, but that's okay. Again, based on the API documentation, it doesn't actually return a response body. We also have access to the logs here as well. So we can see a bit more information if there's any errors or if we're debugging and troubleshooting as well. So let's dive into this flow a little bit deeper to see what's actually happening behind the scenes. So we're going to open up the flow and click on edit. And again, we'll notice that this example is configured to run when a vulnerability is created. So as testers are finding vulnerabilities, we're taking that data and we're reporting it live in Power BI, which is really useful for having that real-time analytics and visualizations within Power BI. And because Power BI is very flexible, you can build reports and views which are aligned with exactly what your team needs. So we can see that there's only one action within this flow, and that is to send the data to Power BI. Now we're going to use a post request, again based on Power BI's API documentation. You can look that up on Microsoft's own support documentation here, and we can see some information. Now we're using semantic models within Power BI. Now there are different ways to get data and set up data within Power BI. You can use Fabric as another example, but in this example we're sticking with semantic models as well. So we'll take a look at those very shortly as well. So so let's take a look at the request script. So we can see the URL is being set within the request script, and that's because there's a dynamic component to it. So we don't know ahead of time what the URL is going to be, because we need to add some specific information into that. So if we open that up, what we'll see is that the request itself is going to be sending information to Power BI's endpoint, and there's an element there where it's leveraging a secret. And the secret is a secret that we've created that allows us to then send the data to Power BI, and it uses that secret to then authenticate the data that we're sending. So when you set up your semantic model, it will give you the secret as part of the push URL, which is what they refer to, and that's what you want to capture and include as a secret within AttackForge. Otherwise, here we have the test context. The test context is all of the vulnerability data. So because this is a vulnerability created event, the context we have right now at the start of the event is the vulnerability data. So we have all this information about the vulnerability that we might want to send to Power BI. It could be information about different ratings and scores, priorities. It could be information to do with the specifics of the vulnerability, affected assets, certain projects that it's linked to. Really, there's sort of no limitations here. It comes down to what data do you need, and a matter of just formatting it to send that information. If there's data here that you need which is not available within the vulnerability created event, you can always have another action in your flow to go and fetch more data. So because flows can talk to the AttackForge self-service API, you can interact with any of the AttackForge APIs. So if you needed to pull extra data specifically about the project that's not in this payload, then that's not a problem. You can go and retrieve that information. So you're not limited by the data that's within this event. You can always create as much as you want and build up all that data that you're going to send across to Power BI. On the left-hand side, all of this is being written in a scripting language called AFScript. So AFScript is the AttackForge script, which is our in-app programming language that we built to make it possible to create completely custom flows. So if you've never worked with AFScript before, I do recommend jumping onto our support site and coming in and having a quick read, watch the video, just to really sort of get a better understanding of what how AFScript works. And that's going to make the building of your flows much easier. Now, so here in the request script on the left-hand side, we can see that it's a relatively simple script. We are going to be constructing the request and setting the URL as we sort of covered earlier. But also within the body, we're going to be submitting the data that is going to be expected for the semantic model itself. Now here we can see we're submitting a vuln, the title of the vuln and the priority of the vuln. So within Power BI, when you're setting up your model, there'll be an option there to configure how you want your data model to look. So we can see here, I've set up two fields, vuln title and vuln priority. And here's an example of the payload if I was to add a new row or record into this data set. So this is what we want to send from AttackForge. We want our data to match this particular format that's expected here. So coming back into AttackForge, we can confirm that that's what our body looks like. So hopefully this request will work. So let's jump into the response script and take a look. So now the response from Power BI is going to be a 200 status code. There's no body to acknowledge the message. This particular Power BI API is designed to just provide a status code saying that it's been accepted. So when we're looking at the response that's coming back, we have those options to look at the status code, the headers, and the body. in this case, all we want is the status code. So here we can check, did the status code come back with a 200? If so, we can now either continue or finish our flow. If there's any further actions, then we can continue with those. Otherwise, we can wrap it up here. And otherwise, if there wasn't a 200 status code that came back, we want to log an error message, and then we can see that information and we can troubleshoot it further as well. And in that case, we'll be aborting this flow. So that's really all there is to it. Creating integrations with Power BI is relatively simple using flows in AttackForge. You can get as creative as you want. You can have as many different types of models that you need to populate that data with. And then from there, you can build, much prettier reports than what I've just got on the screen. Again, this is a basic example, but I'm sure you can get very creative with how you use Power BI. I hope you enjoyed this video, and thanks for watching.